And this, of course, is your weekly dose of all things Manchester City. This is Forever Blue. I'm Ian Cheeseman. We're on XS Manchester 106.1 FM, and we're with a very tired City legend, Paul Dickov, who's literally flown in today just to be on the show. Well, that's not quite true, but that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Yeah.
You've just been on another one of these mega trips with City, spreading the world all around the word all around the world. You're in Thailand, and this time?
Yeah.
This time is today.
Yeah, this time... No. What day is it? No, I was over there for a couple of days, and, you know, I keep waxing lyrical about it. The stuff the club are doing abroad, you know, they sent... some of the City Football School coaches over there to put on a soccer camp with one of their partners, Betadine, and it was just amazing, you know, to see the joy in these young kids' faces. And there was a lot of talented kids there as well who would never get the opportunity, and I keep saying it about these events, there's no other club in the world that would do that.
And of course you will have watched the game, I'm sure, at West Ham with the Taiwanese, if that's the expression, fans. What was that like?
Yeah, it was great. You know, the passion, the show, the knowledge, the show. Obviously winning is great as well. But yet again, another great performance. And, you know, the team in the squad never ceases to amaze me, Ian, because so many times you see teams at different levels in different countries that win the league with a few games to go and they take their foot off the gas. You know, the old saying, they're on the beach already. You know, since they won the league, they've played 2 games and scored 9 goals. And it just shows you the determination in the squad to keep being the best they can, to keep roll over teams, but to keep breaking records as well. You know, and the amount of goals I've got this year is at 101, 102 now is just phenomenal. And yet again, wouldn't it be fitting on Sunday if they could break the all-time Premier League record with points when they get presented with a trophy afterwards? Several
records, I think, could be broken on Sunday, which, as you say, would be perfect. 2 of the records that could go is, the record, it's still all one record, I suppose, is the number of players within one season who've scored 10 goals or more. I think David Silva is 1 short, and if I'm not mistaken, Kevin De Bruyne is 2 short. So wouldn't it be perfect if that happened as well? Because it shows. I mean, you know, I like you, I'm aware of the City group. I'm aware of the whole sort of expansive empire of City. In fact, I wrote a column in the Manchester Evening News today talking about how the EDS and the youth team play the same sort of football. I don't know if you saw the thing on social media with Yokohama Marinos, but they scored this goal that was passed out through the goalkeeper from the back. I watched a bit of a Melbourne City game on TV the other day, and I thought, this is good.
And it was on with Patrick Vieira at New York City as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to see all this sort of stuff. And obviously, we watched the game on Sunday at West Ham United, and it was that expansive, beautiful football again. And they actually made it look so easy, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. And this was a West Ham team fighting again relegation who had decent form coming into the game, you know. And I'll go back to what I just said before. You know, the fact that the league was already won. To go out and put that performance just shows the mentality of the team. We all talk about how good they are with the ball, but the mentality of the team, the mentality of the squad is as good, if not better, than the football they actually play. And, you know, while we're on the subject about talking how many goals we've scored and everything else, we've got the best defensive record in the Premier League, which never gets spoke about. You know, there's always been question marks since Pep's came in about the defensive record, defensive frailties. Hang on a minute, we've got the best defensive record in the Premier League and scored the most goals.
Now, I know there'll be people who are not City fans like we are who will look at it in a different way, but I would be staggered if City's manager, Pep Guardiola, wasn't named coach manager of the year this year. But some people are campaigning for Sean Dyche, and I understand what he's done at Burnley, but how can it be, with all these records and the type of football that they're playing, how can it be anybody but Pep?
Look, there's lots of fantastic managers who have done great this year, but it's not just winning the league, it's how they've done it and the style of play and how early they've won it as well. You know, I think I mentioned last week when I was on here, if we go back to last pre-season, everybody was saying, and this has been forgot about, that this was the hardest Premier League ever to win.
Yeah.
You know, 3-4 years ago, it was the top 4. Last couple of years, it's been the top 6, and people were even saying Everton, with the amount of money they spent, it was going to be a top 7, and how difficult it was going to be. So to go ahead and win the league with 5 games to go, with the style of football they played and how comfortable they've been with it, is just sensational. And the Premier League's never seen anything like it. So, and a majority of that is down to the manager. So for me, he has to be named Manager of the Year.
And the other thing, of course, is that although we talk about individuals, and I've declared my hand now that Fernandinho is my Player of the Year, even though everybody is tending to go for David Silva or Kevin De Bruyne, but it isn't about individuals, and that has to be a coaching masterclass, doesn't it? Because when you've got an individual like Salah at Liverpool, who clearly is a brilliant player at the moment, and Harry Kane, who's scoring goals for fun at Tottenham, and you could argue at United perhaps Lukaku and Pogba are the two key players. At City, it's harder to do that because they're all key players and they all contribute almost as much as each other without there being a standout star.
And within the squad as well. You know, you look earlier on in the season, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan weren't always involved. A huge thing that will always stand in my mind was when we played the derby at Old Trafford and we won 2-1, and Gabriel Jesus started instead of Sergio Aguero. Gabriel Jesus came off, and I think it was Bernardo Silva came on, and David Silva went to play the false nine. At the final whistle, if you see Sergio Aguero, he celebrated as if he just scored the winning goal. Now, in this day and age, and even when I played, if you were a centre forward and you get left out, you weren't happy. You know, you've seen players storm off down the tunnel. You've seen all sorts. He was celebrating with his teammates and the fans in front of the City fans as if he just scored the goal. And for me, that was a huge sign about the team spirit within the squad. You know, when you've got all these world-class players, and sometimes it comes with big egos, but they are all in it for the team. And I've said before, Kevin De Bruyne not winning the Players' Player of the Year, not winning the Football Writers' Player of the Year today, he won't bother one little bit because he knows what he's contributed to the team.
And I know that my colleague Stuart Brennan from the Manchester Evening News talked to Fernandinho after the game at West Ham, and he put it to him, you know, that there's perhaps three midfielders, Silva, De Bruyne and him, as being the three key midfielders. Now, that's up for debate, but that was the way Stuart put it to him and said, do you not feel a little bit jealous that these other two get all the plaudits and you never get mentioned? And a bit like you, I mean, obviously people can't see the expression you just gave me, but that sort of dismissive, that was the way he reacted, Fernandinho. No, it's not about me, it's about the team. I don't mind about anything like that. And that seems to be something that's endemic in the personalities of the players generally. At least that's how it looks to me from the outside.
Yeah, you look at the best, and well, you go back as long as you want into history, the best teams, the most successful teams that are consistently winning things have the best team spirit. It's not done through individuals wanting to be the best player all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at the great Barcelona team.
Although Real Madrid might disprove that with Ronaldo, do you think?
Yeah, but you, I mean, they're nowhere near Barcelona in Liga. Yeah, Champions League. But the best teams have the best team spirit. And you just cannot go out. When you're training with people Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday and playing on a Sunday, you just can't dismiss people throughout the week. You have to have that togetherness when you're training all the time to then translate that onto the pitch on the Saturday or on the Sunday or on the Monday night, whenever it may be. And you know what I said before, and I won't keep banging on about it, I was lucky enough last pre-season, you were out in Houston in the States, and I just sensed in and around the hotel when they were training, before training, after training, the camaraderie there was unbelievable. And this was a team that had a lot of new signings coming in, which is sometimes difficult. And for new players coming in, difficult for the players who are there because they feel as if they're threatened by all these signings coming in. But the whole atmosphere surrounding the whole camp for 2 weeks was just unbelievable. You know, they all got on, they all had a laugh. When they trained and worked, they done it hard. And I mean, they done it properly, every single session. And then they went and enjoyed themselves afterwards, as in around the hotel. And I know a lot of fans will be saying, oh God, they're only away for 2 weeks, but it can be difficult, especially pre-season, when you're doing 3 sessions a day, sometimes 4 sessions a day. Towards the last 2 or 3 days, you're a bit tired, everybody's a little bit narky, they start maybe get on each other back. There was absolutely none of that, and that was a sign for me then that we were on to something special.
I know your team in '99, the one that you're obviously remembered for particularly, sliding on your knees at Wembley and everything, is a different era and a different standard of football. However, it needed in the second half of that season a real togetherness. And when you think back to that team, you know, the Andy Morrisons, the Nicky Weavers and Sean and yourself and lots of others and Edgy, I could go through the whole team. Again, you don't necessarily, I know you and Sean probably get most of the plaudits as the stars of that team, but I still think of that as a unit of a team. And which is perhaps illustrated by the fact that you were telling me about a golf tournament that you're in the near future, yeah. And your team is basically from that team, isn't it?
I've surrounded all my mates. I've got Andy Morrison and Nicky Weaver in there. Andy, because if we don't win, he can beat somebody up on the way round.
He's a
fantastic golfer as well. I've surrounded myself with 3 brilliant golfers in my team. because I'm useless. But no, you're bang on. Any team that's nowhere near the success these guys are having, or any squad I was remotely part of, that got success and were champions. And I'll even go back to myself being a kid at Arsenal. The main thing was the team spirit and the camaraderie, and when things aren't going quite well for one or two, it's the other 8, 9, 10, 11 pulling everybody through. And I see that in this Manchester City team. Obviously they've got a hell of a lot more quality than what we had, and the football and everything else, but that 99 season, and I'll even go on to the next season when the back-to-back promotions, a major part of that was the team spirit that we had, because we all knew we were in it together. If I was having a bad time, I knew I had to go. I had Kevin Orlock, Ian Bishop, I had Andy Morrison to drag me out of it, and vice versa. You know, because you're not going to play well in every single game. And when you've not got that team spirit and you don't feel you're playing that well, you can be isolated sometimes. You know, you can overthink things and you can blame yourself for this, that and the other thing. But when you know you've got players that are going to drag you out of it, you just get on with it, because you know at some point you're going to have to help them. And this Manchester City team is full of that.
We've got Rodney Marsh on a little bit later on, who he admits this himself. I'm not going to go over it again with him, but when he came in at the end of one particular season, he was blamed for spoiling the sort of momentum of a team, and Rodney was always seen as a bit of an individual. So it'd be interesting to hear his perspective now on the importance of the team spirit within City. But switching back to the West Ham game, and this is quite I think a pertinent point, because he epitomised team spirit when he played for City, was Pablo Zabaleta. He played against City. I know it's not the first time, but he played against City in that game. I spoke to a lot of fans beforehand who were excited to see him and wished him well, and actually hoped he might get a consolation goal. Ironically, he got one off his backside, which was a City goal, and it was the 100th as well.
I thought he was going to run away and celebrate with the City players at the time.
But after the game, he almost couldn't help himself to walk with the City players towards the City fans, which I thought said a lot about him, really.
Hey, look, he's away from unbeaten. He is a legend at the club, you know, and that word gets chucked around too easy sometimes. Wears his heart on his sleeve. People keep saying about his determination and his work rate, but what a fantastic player. For 4 or 5 years, he was the best right back in country, one of the best in Europe. But the thing for me with Pablo, and I've been fortunate enough to be in his company quite a few times, he's just a fantastic person. You know, and sometimes you can't say that about a lot of people. You can say they're good players and they're okay off the pitch. They might give some people the time of day sometimes, maybe not the other times. He's just an absolute gentleman. Like Vincent Kompany, an adopted Manc. Loved living in the Manchester area, loved playing for the clubs, and had an unbelievable special relationship with the fans. You know, and I've been there myself when you go back to play against a club that you love, that you probably didn't really want to leave at the time, and it's difficult. But you've just got to get your head down and get on with it, and he's the ultimate professional, and it didn't surprise me to see him walking off with the City players, because he's so... We're talking about it as fans now, you know what I mean? So you can imagine what his teammates think about him as well, and that was a lovely moment.
It was. There's two subjects I want to talk about tonight. One I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, because it's in the news at the moment. It's about football programmes and the possibility that... I didn't realise that they were actually mandatory for clubs to produce a matchday magazine, but it seems they are. And the FA, the EFL, the Football League, are going to have a vote to see whether clubs don't need to have them. So that's a subject area I want to speak about a little later on. And we've got a fan coming on who's a big collector and a big City fan who's interested in his own right anyway. But the other subject I wanted to mention, which is people are talking about at the moment, so I feel as if I need to at least mention it, is the fact that the season ticket prices have been announced, and I think they're about £20 or £30 more a year for a typical season ticket. Some fans will be upset about that. Some fans say, well, that's just the way it goes. But people have also pointed out that it's only a very, very small percentage of the turnover of the club. I think it might have been better if the club had as a PR stunt, not done that and just frozen it or whatever. That's news to me. Obviously, I've been in my travels, and
exactly, it's the first I've heard about it. You know, fans, especially the Manchester City fans, I know this firsthand, that they're the best. I know you agree with me on that, because you're one of them as well, and they will support the team regardless. And but what they are seeing is probably the best football that any team in the Premier League has ever played. You know, and that's something for the club, and I'm sure. I mean, as again, I'm speaking, you've just hit me with that one there. I'm sure the club would have liaised with people from the fans' clubs as well on this one, you know. I'm sure it's not something that was just done very, very lightly, and I'm sure there would have been conversations had and some agreement that would have came to it.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
I mean, I'm in the same situation as you. I'm in the same situation as you. I'm lucky because I don't pay to go to games. I'm in the press box because of the various things that I do. And obviously, when you go, generally speaking, you won't be paying. You probably get paid to go. So it's a different.
I wish I did.
Well, so maybe occasionally, but it's certainly a different situation than normal fans. And I understand the difficulties in finding the money for everything. And actually, the programmes are almost sort of related to that because they're £3. You know, then you've got your pie and your drink and your transport, and it all adds up, doesn't it?
It is. It's, I think for any football fan, not just Manchester City fans or in the Premier League. You know, I remember having conversations with my board when I was at Oldham and Doncaster about seeing what we could do, you know, down in the Championship and at League One level, and it's difficult because, you know, your hardcore set of fans will be there, and the one thing you don't want to do is try and take the mick a little bit in the prices, you know. And at Oldham and at Doncaster, I wanted to try and create new initiatives, whether it be freezing season ticket prices, bringing the price of the programmes down, or if you buy a programme, you get your pie alongside it, all these sort of things to try and repay the fans a little bit. But it's not just, you know, I'm saying it's not just at Man City or in the Premier League, it's happening all the way down now.
I know Vincent Kompany was quite outspoken about it, so it'll be interesting to see if he has anything more to say about that. We have found a gentleman called Mark McCarthy, who is a City fan, who lives in Milton Keynes, who travels all over the place. If you saw him, Paul, you would instantly know who he is because you would recognise him. In fact, you know him already, do you? And he stands in the crowd. He's got his son with him usually, and he whizzes his scarf round in a circle. And the number of times he gets picked out by the cameras when it's on TV is unbelievable. So he's becoming a bit of a star, really. But the reason I've got Mark on, as well as talking about his commitment to City, is to talk about programmes. So, first of all, Mark, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to join you. Evening, Paul.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
So, I want to talk to you about City as well, but or about the football, I should say. But I want to ask you, first of all, about this programme thing, because I know that you're a big collector of programmes, and there's a suggestion that the Football League, so it might not affect the Premier League, but nevertheless, the principles there, that you might not be able to produce, you might not have to produce a programme anymore. As an avid collector, as a big football fan, how do you feel about that?
Well, first thoughts on that would be it's a travesty, really, for the match-going fan. I mean, collecting programmes is all part of the match-day experience. It's part of football's heritage, isn't it? It's just like a match-day pint and a pie. You go to the game, you get your programme, you have your sort of, you know, your usual things to do. They changed the 3 p.m. kickoff times, which kind of killed that ritual. But to lose the match-day programme, I think, for the match-going fans, it will lose a bit of appeal, in my opinion, anyway.
How much do programmes mean to you?
Well, they're probably the thought. You know, that's the first thing I think of. You know, we travel to the games. The first thing we do when we get to the ground, we get a programme. My son's now doing that as well, and that's always been the thing we've done. So it's part of the matchday experience: to travel, getting to the game, getting the programme. Don't really have a flick through at half time, which passes the half time 15 minutes. Quick read on the train on the way home. So it's part of the matchday experience for us.
Has the programme changed, do you feel, as if over the years, because you've got a huge collection, that the programme content has changed over the years?
It's definitely changed. The more modern programmes now, it's more... There's too much, for me, there's too much advertising in there, or promotional offers, the kind of stuff you see in everyday life wherever we go now, where someone's trying to sell us something or see. So it's not really what the fans want to see. So the content has changed now. I mean, early for 70s, 80s programme first started, I started reading. You'd read them to find more information on the club, the players, injured players, reserves, that kind of thing. But now there's not so much, you know, it's more sort of sales adverts or promotional offers. So I think that's losing the interest for the fans now to look at them.
Is your son, who's obviously a lot younger than you, as big a collector of programmes as you are?
No. He started to collect them really the last season or so. I've been telling him what mine's worth, so it's been giving him a bit more of an interest to start collecting them. But he mainly collects the ones from the games he goes to. But to be honest, obviously he's a lot younger than me, as you said, but he doesn't really read them. He wants them more as a momentum of the game he went to. So it's only about, you know, the game he went to. He wants a programme from that game.
And what's the most valuable programme you've got? I mean, from my experience, because I've got a programme for every single City game I've attended, and when I broached the subject with somebody about possibly selling one or two of them or all of them or whatever I was going to do, I got the impression that the vast majority of them were probably worth less than the actual face value of the programme when I bought it in the first place. But there must be exceptions to that.
There is, really. It's maybe from the 70s onwards, programmes were mass-produced more, so they were more obtainable. But if you go back sort of pre-1960 to the 50s, war years, they're more collectible. People didn't go so much. And obviously, they didn't sort of have longevity about them, didn't last so long. So there's less of them about. As for today's ones, or maybe, as I said, from 70s onwards, they're easily got hold of, and you struggle to sell a big collection of 70s, 80s, 90s. In fact, you probably couldn't even give them away.
Interesting. What are you like, Paul? I mean, as a player, has programme ever registered with you?
Well, absolutely. We're just saying off air there. As a player, you're saying, Mark, about it being part and parcel, and it's an institution of going to the football matches, the programme. And I can't remember one player ever not going into the change room. The first thing he did was pick up the programme and sit there and read it with their cup of tea or cup of coffee. I know it's probably a vitamin drink or a high energy drink that they have now. And I even know players that would sit and read it just to see the bio of the opposition team, just so it could give them a reminder just before they went out. What I was going to ask you though, Mark, did you ever go back and read any of the old programmes? Because I've got old programmes from when I played that I've kept. My youngest boy, Max, he keeps every programme that he goes to. And I love going back and reading them sometimes and just thinking, do you know what, I'd forgot about that. Or I'd forgot about that player, or forgot about that article. For me, that's the magic of keeping them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're a reference, to the time, to the day, or the memory's not always as good as it used to be, but you can go to that programme, you can look and remember, and then you find yourself flicking through and looking at the stuff, and you could be lost for hours, looking through them and referring to the dates. But it's interesting, I was speaking to Richard Edger earlier in the season about the programmes, as you just said, Paul. He said the same. He would keep them, they'd go to the game, and as fans would often wonder, do the players get them laid out in the dressing room for you for when you get there ready?
Yeah, they used to be sitting on your kit when you went in, and literally it was the first thing you done. And even when I was managing, I remember that when I went into my manager's office, the first thing I would look for was the programme, and if there wasn't one in my office, I was like, somebody just go and get me one quickly, because I think it's a little bit of a release from the stress of the game and the nervous, so you can sit down there and read it. And it's the one thing, I've got some stories about where I've seen players reading programmes before a game. Obviously I won't go into that on air at this time, but for me, as a fan, as an ex-player, as an ex-manager, it is something that goes hand in hand with going to a football match, whether it's with a pint, whether with a pie. I just think that a football programme's the most important thing, and it would be a crying shame if I can't even think why they want to get rid of it.
I'm guessing it's the smaller clubs, really, in terms of they might not sell many, and it might not be cost effective, and this might not affect Premier League clubs, to be fair. However, there is a trend, and I'm sure I've read somewhere that programme sales generally across the board have gone down as the years have gone along, and I think there's people I know now who don't buy one anymore. So there's definitely a trend that way, Mark, isn't there?
But there must be something to do about that. Whether the people publishing them, whether the clubs doing them, bring the price. There's got to be something, because I just think, and people listening in might think it's not a big thing. I think it's huge, for the history and for the fans. Like you, Mark, I'm sure your dad collected them, and as you're saying, your son now goes and does it. It's something that goes all the way through families as well, not just in our match day.
Well, you can relate to clubs, especially maybe lower league clubs, if the programme's not selling. If they produce a lesser number of programmes, then that might even make them more collectible in time, and rather than the big mass produced and on a match day have less. But absolutely, but my interest came through my granddad, who passed me down the programmes, as I'm sure I've said to you in the past, which came from Mick McCarthy playing for Man City. He was a cousin of mine, so that's where my